Welcome back. I'm joined by David W. Livingstone, who is a professor and chair of liberal studies at Vancouver Island University, as we unpack the state of our education system and really secondary education and whether it is serving the moral and virtue character necessary to be citizens, effective citizens in this country. So thank you again for joining me, Dr. Livingstone. We were explaining what a liberal education, because a lot of folks are concerned, what is a liberal arts education and why is that so necessary? Could you please unpack that for us?
Yeah, the simplest way might be just to come at it by looking at how we do it at my university, since we have a liberal education department, basically, and one of the few left in Canada, by the way. So we take students through sort of a survey of some of the great works that have existed from biblical times through the ancient Greeks all the way up into modern times. And what we have the students doing is really looking at some of the big questions that human beings have asked for a long time. What is justice? What is freedom? What is virtue? What does it take to actually be a self-governing individual such that you can go out into the world and live your life according to some solid principles that you've thought through, as opposed to simply living in accordance with whatever opinion you've acquired unthinkingly that your society has given to you? So that's really the liberal part of liberal education. It goes back to the idea of freedom. But in this case, it really means the freedom of the mind, that you are thinking as a free individual. You're not just simply a slave to popular opinion about this or that or the other thing.
Right, right. And I think that's important because we see, especially in, like, say, the K to 12 jurisdiction, so many popular trends are influencing the direction of education. And there's a lot of concern about ideology. And is this social media driven ideology or where is this coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a study that came out fairly recently from the MacDonald Laurier Institute, which tells us that some of this is happening in the universities as well. So that I think it was Christopher Dummett was the lead author on that study. He's a historian. And they found that even the professors were self-censoring in the Canadian universities. That particularly the conservative or right-leaning professors found that they were self-censoring, and that meant just even in the lunchroom, they were maybe uncomfortable saying something that seemed to go across the grain. But they were also thinking about certain topics that they would be reluctant to bring into class that they might otherwise think were important for students to come across. So there's this blanket of sort of conformity,
Hmm.
which seems to be descending even on the universities, which is terrible because the universities should be the place where lots of different ideas are coming to the surface. And so my argument isn't that it should be sliding all the way to the right, but rather we should have that viewpoint diversity where students are coming across a whole lot of different ways of thinking,
Right.
including allowing them an opportunity to see some of the past thinkers, and excuse me, and what they've thought. Because we can also get trapped in this view that because we live in the present, somehow we've solved all the major problems, that somehow we're the smartest people that have ever been on the planet.
Right.
There's no point looking at the past because there's nothing we can learn from them. When we get our students to actually crack open the books and read some of these older works, they're astounded by the insights that these works can offer to them. And it gives them then an alternative to go out into the world and they say, well, I don't know. I'm not so sure that my friends have all the answers because I've just read this profound thinker from the past who can challenge some of these ideas. So that's what I think its real value is.
So for someone who wants to say be a carpenter, why is a liberal arts education of value in Canadian society?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because my son is actually going into the electrician's program. So I've got a son who's going into the trades, and I think that's fantastic. So I'm certainly not opposed to even the universities being a place where students can learn some very solid skills to get them into the workforce. I think that's really important. But in particular, we were talking about civic education, and I think that's also where liberal education makes a big contribution. These people who are going into the trades or vocations or anything else are also our fellow citizens. And so for them to know, for instance, some background on how this regime we live in came about and what are its principles, I think that's really important. When they go into the ballot box, they'll just have a better understanding of what it is that they're participating in, and also maybe how to preserve this regime that we live in, which has been pretty successful for quite a long time. I teach in the politics department too. One of the things I tell my students is we have a peaceful transition of power at the federal level, at the provincial level, and that is a rare occurrence. If you look through history, if you look even around the world today, there aren't that many countries that can boast the peaceful transfer of power
Mm,
after an election.
right.
And that's not something to be taken for granted. We have to figure out how that came about in Canada and then also how to preserve those sorts of institutions and principles.
Absolutely. No, those are some excellent points. We're going to pick up this discussion in just a few moments.